Now we have a completed roster. We've just got to go through the process of maintaining it as we work through that period. Of course, you're going to be building rosters kind of 6 to 8 weeks ahead of them due to be worked. But as that period comes around and people call in sick and situations change, we've got to, of course, record that time and record that information within the system. So to do that, of course, part of that will be recording sickness, which is just adding the unavailabilities by right-clicking the particular date that a person is sick and adding an unavailability. But we also have the option of, for example, sending shifts to the bank as and when required if someone did call in sick, or we just had available shifts that needed filling, and also extending and shortening shift times as and when people stay late, for example, or they're required to come in earlier. Changing duty times is done in very much the same way as most other functions within the system. It's just a matter of right-clicking the relevant shift or date. So for example, if we wanted to extend this late shift here, which is currently 2 till 10, if I right-click, we have various options, but one of the first ones is adjust times. So I can click adjust times. It shows me the default times that it's currently set to. For argument's sake, if we required this person to be in at 12, we can just manually type in 12 o'clock. That will automatically extend the work time. We could also change the rest time as well if they went over 10 hours. We could change that to an hour. We can add a note as to why we've done that. There's no requirement to, but of course it helps in justifying why you might have done that. And if we click OK, that shift will now differ from all other shifts in the sense that although it's still a late and it's still as it was, it's actually got a timestamp underneath it now. If I look on 2 weeks, it's actually easier to see the fact that that shift is slightly taller than most, so again easier to spot, but also has the timestamp, and that just suggests that it's differed from the default late times, and it stamps the time underneath as to what that is. If we did the same thing on the late here, so right click, adjust times, and change that to 12 o'clock, it'll do exactly the same thing. And now it looks exactly the same as the other one. When we have a situation where we've recorded some sickness and it's affected duties, so for example, I'm going to extend the sickness even further. So if I right click and edit the unavailability, and what I'm planning on doing is extending it over the top of this late here, so it actually cancels the late. So if I pick November 1st for when it is due to end, it'll adopt the shift hours in the unavailability first and foremost, but it will also cancel the late. And now that's cancelled, what that means is the shift has been returned back into our vacancies at the top here. We can see it here. So instead of it being issued, it's returned it back to the top, and now we're back to square one as such, and we now need to have this shift filled. The next step for shift filling, if we can't fill it with our own substantive staff, is to send it to bank. So again, just as with any other unavailability or shift, we can right-click a vacant shift as well. Now, rather than adjust times this time, what we're going to do is send it to bank, which is just another option in that list. So if I send to bank, there's only one late available on that day, so it'll only have one late here. If I'd have sent the night, we would have had 3 shifts because all 3 are vacant, so it presumes that you need to fill all 3 vacant shifts. If you needed to remove that, so send to bank on the nights, all 3 shifts are listed here. If you only wanted one filling, just highlight one and remove, highlight the other and remove. So you're just left with what you actually want to send to bank. I'm going to go back to the late and then right click and send to bank. We only have one available, and there's only 2 boxes that are required to be filled in this section, so they're the ones in gold or surrounded by gold. So the request reason, so in this case I'm going to do sickness. You can just pick from the drop down list, sickness, and the required grade, well, it's an RN shift. It's labelled RN here, and we just pick that from the list. Now, just as a reference point, all nurses, or nurse grades I should say, are known as NUR. So you can actually type N-U-R, and it will filter all the grades to nurse grades. If it was HCA, it's just HCA, and then their bands here. Make sure you pick the appropriate band that you want filling. So I want nurse band 5. So I click nurse band 5. At this point, I do have the ability to assign a preferred person. Now, that doesn't fill the shift with that person. It just gives you the option to label that to the bank team as I would like such and such a person. But the bank team will try and get that person, but if they can't get in touch with them for whatever reason, they will still fill it with someone else. You can just click assign preferred person and then pop their surname in there, for example. It doesn't even need to be their complete surname, just part of it. And then if I wanted this person, for example, I can press select and it will issue a preferred person, but again doesn't book it automatically. Now if I press OK on this, that shift now differs to what it was. So what we've got are these few little icons over the top. So first and foremost, we know it's a bank shift because it's got this little green man on it. So if I hover over it, it'll give us a reason as to what these are. So bank duty, and it will give us a booking reference number in a second. The bank duty is specified by the green man, and if it was a purple lady, it would be an agency shift, which we don't have the ability to send out. But of course, if that was sent to agency, the bank team would automatically do that for you. The required grade is just in there as well, staff nurse band 5, and the fact that it's been sent to a different team. It's been sent to the bank team. It's also now labelled with what grade we wanted, and effectively all we need to do now is just wait for the bank team to fulfill that shift. Now, whilst it's in its current state, so currently unfilled and still in your vacancies box at the top, we do have the ability to reset it. So if we found, if we created a situation where actually we don't need bank anymore, we could right click and reset to unit fulfillment. So we're going to fulfill it ourselves, and that would recall it from the bank queue. The little green man disappears and everything goes back to normal. And that was just right click, reset to unit fulfillment. To send it to bank without a preferred person, it looks exactly the same. So sickness, and then no band 5, and press OK. We got a grade back and the little green man to stipulate the fact that it's out to bank and awaiting fulfillment. Once that's filled, it will travel to the bottom of your roster. Underneath your very last team, you'll have a new team called Bank and Agency, and the green shift or orange shift will be shown underneath, right at the very bottom, and it will no longer be in your vacancies box. It will be a filled shift by a bank member of staff, and they will be named right at the very bottom of your roster. I'm just going to recall this once more. Right click, reset to unit fulfillment. You can change the requirements as well by using edit bank requirements. It just brings this box back. So if you wanted to change the grade, for example, you could do that and press OK, and that would feed back through to the bank team. But in this case, I'm just going to reset it back to us, and it changes it back to a regular shift that can be just dragged on to the roster.